Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 70th episode. Sorry we're a week late with this. We had some stuff going on that prevented us from recording, but we're here now to talk about another movie. But before we do, Niles, how have you been the last couple weeks since our last recording?
I've been exhausted. Yeah, I'm the reason why we didn't record or have an episode released last week. We were in the process of moving. Now we're all settled and things are finally falling into place. But man, moving is it takes it out of you, and you never realize just how much.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it's the worst, and you never realize just how much stuff you have until you have to put it all in boxes and move it, and then you feel like a hoarder all of a sudden. But
yeah, well, and it's like all the little things that you're like, oh, I can get that later. It won't take that long, and it's like it takes a long time to get all the little things out of an old place.
Yeah, exactly. Like you helped me out with the move, and there was I was like, oh, there's plenty of stuff left, but it's okay. We'll get it in one go later on down the week, and then nope, it took a million more trips, but it was okay. But we appreciate your help. But yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, I am doing pretty well. Just kind of same old stuff. Playing a lot of video games recently, which we'll talk about later in the episode,
Nice.
but not a whole lot going on. But enough about me, because this week we are talking about the movie Bottoms. And Bottoms is directed by Emma Seligman and written by Seligman and Rachel Sennott. The film stars Rachel Sennott, Ayo Edebiri, Ruby Cruz, Havana Rose Liu, Kaya Gerber, Nicholas Galitzine, Miles Fowler, and Marshawn Lynch, and follows two unpopular queer high school students who decide to start an all-girls fight club at their high school as part of their mission to have sex before graduation. Niles, what were your initial non-spoilery thoughts on Bottoms?
I loved a lot of it. I think this is just such a terrific comedy, and aside from it just being a comedy, because I feel like there's so many great jokes in here, and there's a lot of great comedic beats that appeal to a lot of different generations. I feel like it's also an earnest narrative, and I feel like it's something that a lot of teenagers, both in and out of the LGBTQ community, can relate to. I felt like I could relate to a lot of things in this movie, and I'm several years out of high school, but it's in a lot of ways, this film, to me, it feels like such like a surrealist satire of like those American Pie type films, or like American Teenage kind of films. Those have always been kind of this male-oriented sexual conquest narrative, and honestly, that is so outdated in movies now that it's like you don't see that in movies anymore, and there's very good reason why. Bottoms does a good job of putting a very fresh spin on this idea of like losing your virginity trope, and a new perspective, and there's a lot of great comedic beats. What about you, Dylan? What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I thought this was hysterical. It definitely follows a pretty standard comedy movie structure, but the all-girls fight club, school club premise, combined with focusing on two lesbian girls as the lead, make it feel much more fresh than that structure otherwise would. I also thought it was just really funny how silly the movie is in so many ways. And then sometimes isn't in others. But, like, the football team is always in full pads, walking around the school. With one exception, parents just don't exist in this movie at all. They're not on screen. And also, the girls in this club are just beating the shit out of each other in the gym. And no one seems to really take notice or issue with it, including one scene that is just a violent beatdown in front of the whole school. And it's like, everybody just treats it as fine. And I think the world of the movie is so hilarious because it just plays so fast and loose with the rules of like a real high school that it like dives into this level of absurdity that I think really works well in its favor. And like you said, it is earnest too. Like their character arcs and like emotional things that these people are going through that are treated seriously, despite the rest of the movie being very, very silly. And we mentioned at the top that Marshawn Lynch former NFL player, Marshawn Lynch, is
Yeah.
in this movie, and he's actually very good. But I thought it was really interesting that he improvised a lot of his dialogue, and he said taking this role, he viewed it as a way to sort of make some amends for his initial reaction to his sister coming out. And a quote from him is, direct quote is, "I did not handle it right. As a 16-year-old boy, I didn't handle it the way I feel I probably should have. So I told her it was giving me an opportunity to correct my wrongs and to rewrite some of my mistakes." He was apparently initially unsure about accepting the role, but was encouraged to by his sister.
Oh.
And he's just really comedically good in this movie. I think he's great. And we'll talk about him more a little bit later. But I just thought that was a fun, nice bit of trivia. And, you always want to applaud people who are willing to confront their bigotry from their past and grow and change as people, and it looks like he did that, and that's cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up because I actually didn't know that. I mean, he was such a great addition to this film. Yeah, I think he made a lot of those comedic beats in this film really work well, and I just never really envisioned Marshawn Lynch being that funny too. So it was just,
I know,
it's just really nice to see him on the screen, like in this role, and kind of embodying that. And I feel like, to your point, he, without getting too much into spoilers, but I feel like his character does grow in a way too in this movie, and I feel like that is reflective of his own personal growth there in the real world and coming to terms with, I'm not trying to speak for his experience at all, but I feel like that it is a little bit reflective there of the change that he had in the world. But yeah, I think the movie, it's campy, it's silly, it's fun, and it's outlandish in a lot of ways. It just kind of embraces like absurdity in the American teenage experience, especially in high school. And I think we all know that high school is such an awkward phase of life. It's uncomfortable for everybody. You're finding out who you are. And I think this movie, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it knows when to say, okay, let's actually listen to the emotions here and reflect that on the screen. It's not just always comedic bits. It's like it knows when to slow down and say, let's have a serious moment, even though everything around us is so just absurd.
Yes. And overall, I would say this is a super easy recommendation from me. If you're fine with some violence and are not a homophobic loser, you will probably have a good time here. If you are homophobic, then don't go out to the movies, I guess.
Stay at home. We don't want you.
Just shut the fuck. Yeah. We don't want to see you outside around other people.
Yeah.
You don't deserve that.
I agree. Yeah, very easy to recommend this film. It's a very fun comedy. Yeah, I think I have like one small critique with it, and it was really just the ending. But,
okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that later, and it's really not even a big complaint. It's just a little weird for me. At that ending. But
okay,
yeah, we'll
fair
get
enough.
into that later. But yeah, do you want to jump into spoilers?
Yes, I do. Let's do some spoilers. So we'll start off, we'll just talk through some of the things we found really funny. Start off on a high note. So you want to start it off?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good jokes in this movie, and I think one thing that really spoke to me that I found funny was like these references to real world school violence sometimes were just shockingly funny.
Yeah.
Like
it's so dark, but it's done in such it's such a dark bit of humor, but it's done in a way that's like makes it fun, like lighthearted as well.
Does. Yeah, like there are definitely some moments that get very dark, but not terrible. Like there's that one scene, like they're in the cafeteria and the goth kid, he gets food spilled on him, like from behind, and like it's like that's it.
Yeah,
that's the last straw. And he pulls out some paper and he writes in big bold letters like "Plan to blow up school." And
yeah, and probably a good decision to make it blow up school and not shoot up school. Maybe that would have struck a little bit too close to home because the blowing up thing is just a level of absurdity beyond what we deal with in the day-to-day life of the horror of school shootings. And if you're an American, that is a trauma that we all live with all of the time. That's ridiculous and that we shouldn't have to be dealing with, but we do. And at the end of the movie, it comes back to him, like the bomb finally goes off. It's like, that was supposed to be mine. Like, it just, He's robbed of his moment.
his glory. Yeah, the poor dude, the outcast. But yeah, I think it was a tasteful way to squeeze that in there and be like, okay, let's poke some fun at this thing that we're kind of used to in a way.
Yeah.
Speaking of explosives, there was another explosive scene in the movie
Uh-huh.
where they're to get revenge on Jeff, the quarterback, after he cheated on
Yeah.
his girlfriend. I'm blanking on the character's name, but they go out and
With Hazel's mom, the only parent who plays a role in the movie is
he cheats on his high school girlfriend for like the umpteenth time with an adult, Hazel's mom, and she finds out, and then so they go to his house and they try to TP it, and they're doing a terrible job, and they're trying to egg the house, and they're doing a terrible job.
It's awesome.
And then Hazel, I just love her character in this movie too, because she always just takes things way too literally. She doesn't understand sarcasm, and it's like everyone knows that person from high school who just didn't understand when you were joking.
Yep.
They still exist today, and maybe they're a little bit better at sarcasm, but you can get it. And like she was like, "You guys really went to juvie?" and all that stuff. It's like, no, they didn't. But she's like. She goes and puts a car bomb under Jeff's car and it blows it up. But they were like, "No, we were joking."
Yeah, no, and I love how like PJ's like, "Yeah, Hazel, let's just do terrorism," and then she's like, "Okay." Everything is so fun, and I do love with her character as well. After like when PJ's apologized to him, it's like, look, and I do really appreciate how every meeting you take notes and then you type them up and you send them in an email to everybody afterward. It's like just logistics of running a school student club that are not mentioned in the movie at all up until that point.
Like, oh, that's actually a very helpful thing that she does, and those people are.
And the fact that it is an official school club that has a faculty sponsor as well is so funny.
Yeah, it makes me curious what the other like clubs at this school are. Are they other like probably not violence related, but I imagine they're silly and outlandish too, of like underwater basket weaving kind of bullshit, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, another bit early on where the car just like lightly touches Jeff, the football player's knee, is very funny, and he overreacts, and then they're all screaming into the sky. The movie sets its tone very, very quickly about what it is, and it's like you're either going to be on board with that or not right off the bat. My whole theater was, I think.
Yeah.
But another line I really loved was. There's like, even though you're a black Republican, you're the smartest one of all of us. That's, I thought, a great line. Along with the it's the second wave all over again line regarding the second wave of feminism.
Right, yeah. I forgot about that line. That was a good joke.
Yeah, it's so quickly. It happened so quickly, but there's so much great stuff in here.
And I mean, the guy who plays Jeff, like Nicholas here, the actor, he does just such a fantastic job of playing this dumb jock. Like, I think in general, Jeff was a hilarious character, and like all the football players were very funny. But like, I mean, everyone in this movie was funny too, and they all had great comedic timing. But like, I thought he was hilarious. Like, just all of his reactions and the way he responded to things, and you know, when he's like, when his girlfriend confronts him about cheating on her, he's just like, "Well, I only cheated on you like 4 times, right?" Like, he's like counting it.
Yeah. And I also I love how the plot ends up being like, oh, they have to save the douchebag's life. Like the whole mission at the end, it's like, this guy sucks. We don't like him, but they're gonna actually, like, I love the twist too that, like, I know you don't like it as much, we'll talk about it, but like the fact that it's not just a conspiracy, but that this rival high school is actually killing their football players every time they play each other. It's like, what the fuck is this movie?
What is this town where there is no laws against killing football players? Oh, it's hilarious.
Yep.
One of the other scenes that I really loved too was I loved all the Fight Club scenes and like the scenes with Marshawn Lynch, like when they're trying to convince him to be their club supervisor. He's just looking at a nudie mag, you know, like not really listening to them. I thought that was hilarious, but I liked.
And he's like supposed to be teaching feminism or something. I don't know what he's doing.
I have no idea. Like, there were test tubes in the class too, and it's like, you're not a science teacher, but who cares?
What does he say when Jeff smashes the glass thing?
He's like, couldn't you just like done the motion and not actually break the glass? Like, what was the point? But I love they have these meetings after school, and eventually they're like, okay, let's just actually talk about our feelings. They have this little trauma powwow, basically, where everyone just sits down.
Right.
But then they just breeze through everyone's trauma so quickly. Like, it's just one person says something, and then they skip right to the next person. They don't even take time to, like, talk about that person's experiences. Like, there's that whole bit with Brittany, where she's talking about her jewelry business, and she says, "Oh, I'm actually really smart, guys, and I hate it when people think of me as vapid or dumb," and then everyone just moves on.
Yeah. Well, and also you have the two main girls, like, they're constantly trying to redirect the trauma conversations back to only the girls that they're interested in. They don't give a shit about anybody else there, and it's just because they make the club basically as a means of, like, hanging out with the girls they like and getting laid, and then it just becomes something else beyond that.
It's so funny. And then one of the other bits that I thought was really funny too was later on in the film, they're in their lowest point. The PJ and Rosie, their friendship's kind of on the mend, and they don't know how to fix it. And so Josie goes to Rhodes for their old, like, babysitter, I believe it was, and she's asking her for advice, like, what do I do here? And Rhodes has nothing to share with her, and she's so difficult to understand too. the way she's speaking. Like, I think Josie says, like, I can't understand what you just said. Like,
well, and I loved it too because they called her Yoda, right? Because I guess as kids they used to think she was so wise or whatever, and now as a high schooler she goes back to her and it's like, this is just some fucking person. She doesn't know anything more than anybody else. She just seemed wise because I was, like, 5.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it's like, I talk about this with, my partner sometimes, and it's, when you're younger, you view, like, those, like, high schoolers or those people at, like, camp and stuff who are your counselors or instructors or, like, the lifeguards at the pool. You're like, those are full adults, and you just think they have so much power and responsibility, and then you get to that age and you realize, oh wow, that was really dangerous of them to be supervising me.
Yeah, well, because no one knows what they're doing, right? Like, every stage of life you get to, you're like, wait, I used to think people had it figured out by this, but I don't. It doesn't seem like anybody around me knows what's going on.
Yeah.
We're just all stumbling through. And I also really liked that, as standard as the movie structure is as a comedy, I really appreciated how it didn't fall into the, like, friends to lovers cliche with PJ and Josie, where they kind of realized, like, oh, we were, like, the right people for each other all along. They very easily could have gone down that road of them realizing that, and it works in a lot of movies, but I don't think it would have worked here, and I like that they just went a different direction, and they were just friends.
Yeah. I like that too. I think it's like I think that trope has a name of, like, the first girl after all trope, and I feel like you've seen that before.
Oh, okay.
And some, obviously other movies from, like, the 80s and stuff where it's like, oh, the girl, she finally takes off her glasses at the end, and the guy realizes, oh, you're the one I should have been with the whole time, kind of.
Which is such a silly thing.
It's incredibly, like, just male driven in that regard. And I'm glad that here that they didn't go down that road too, because I think that both of our protagonists, who were both awesome, by the way. I love both of their performances. PJ and Josie here, they did great. These characters are fantastic and very well rounded, and they felt genuine as well. But they both had their own separate romantic interests from the start of the movie to the end, and I thought that was the best for the narrative, and it made the best possible sense for this whole thing. So I agree with you there.
Yep. And jumping around a little bit, but speaking of them both having their own separate love interest, I think Brittany, PJ's love interest, actually being straight was a plot point that I liked a lot, and this isn't something I can relate to, but I can imagine that a lot of LGBT teens have either had this experience or really worried about having this experience of, like, thinking someone is really into you and kind of making a move only for them to be like, oh, I'm straight. As straight people, like, just due to numbers, I guess, like, that's not something we have had to worry about as much. But I can imagine, like, that's probably a really big, like, a bit of trauma or like insecurity for a lot of LGBT people. But I think it's another one of those things that's a bit predictable in the plot, but it lands. So who cares if it's predictable?
Yeah, well, and I thought it worked for the plot too because Josie and PJ they meet back up at the school assembly the next day, and they kind of chat to each other about their nights. And when PJ realizes what Rosie did, she's like kind of elated for her friend. And I mean that's cut short by what happens at the assembly, but like you can tell that she's genuinely happy for her friend there. Like you've achieved your like you did this, like you finally like did the thing with the girl, that's something to be celebrated
Right.
and to be acknowledged between friends. Like they obviously had good chemistry as friends there.
Yeah, but it also sets the stage for their falling out because PJ doesn't get what she wants, right? And that makes her more bitter in the next section of the film, and it does a great job of doing both things, like being happy for your friend, but also like I don't care that something good happened to you; it should have happened to me instead, like that meme,
Oh yeah.
So it manages to do kind of both things here, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I feel like in this movie too, you mentioned that Marshawn Lynch he improvised a lot of his lines, right? That's really cool.
That's what I read, at least.
I feel like that gelled pretty well within this movie, that improvisation. I feel like some of those other lines too, outside of Marshawn Lynch, like I could just be like spitballing here, like I couldn't find any article like back this up, but like I feel like some of PJ and Josie's dialogue, like back and forth to each other, was a little improvised at times. Right. Maybe I was reading into it a little bit too much, but like,
we see that in the credits, kind of, because like in the credits when a movie shows a lot of those alternate takes and stuff like that, it's like that's kind of indicative that there's a lot of improv going on. Because like the football players like yelled a different thing in all of those different takes, and they just picked whichever one worked best.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think all the improv in this movie, it's a good example of when improv can work. And Dylan and I, we did some improv in college, so we know a thing or two. I would say we're certainly not improv experts, but we've been around the block. We've done some shows, we've done some practice, and I think there's a lot of actors and actresses out there that can do really good improv in movies and in comedic movies, and sometimes that really works really well. Like, but then sometimes it doesn't. And I haven't seen the movie, but like I've heard like secondhand of that Ghostbusters, like the 2017 with the female, or like the all-female cast. I'm not trying to shit on it at all, but like from what I hear about what I've heard about it is that there's just a lot of improv in that movie. Like they just kind of shoved as much of that improv stuff into it, and a lot of those actors are genuinely funny. But like I think one of the general critiques that I've seen of that film is that just the improv just feels forced. It doesn't feel genuine sometimes. It doesn't feel natural for the narrative, and I feel like this movie, the improvisation feels very natural between all these characters. Marshawn, did a great job. PJ and Josie, I feel like their dialogue feels very natural, and it feels like what you can expect high schoolers to talk like.
I agree. And like another example of good versus bad improv that is more like we've reviewed one of the movies on our show is Thor Ragnarok versus Thor Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok has a lot of improv in it, but it works in that movie. Thor Love and Thunder has even more improv, and it doesn't work really at all.
Yes, good point.
Despite our initial positive review of that movie, like I don't really feel like it holds up, and a lot of the comedy is by far the weakest part. So it's if you want to compare good improv versus bad improv in the context of a movie, that is such a great example because it's the same characters, same series, same creative team. One hits the mark and one does not.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that one.
Yeah. But I also thought another element that was really funny and kind of spoke to the way a lot of high schools where I came from is just how the football players were, particularly Jeff, were just treated like gods at the school. It was very funny, especially in small towns, in Texas at least. Like the football stadiums are like temples. They're massive, and high school football is this huge deal. Obviously, it's exaggerated in this film, but everything is exaggerated in the movie, so it fits. And it's just funny how they are like treated as the most important people at school.
Yeah, it's like it's got very like Friday Night Lights vibes of like this is the biggest event to ever happen to our town in the last 50 years is
Yeah.
this homecoming game. Why? Why is
Right.
this the biggest event of all time here? It's just, yeah, they have such an unbalanced spotlight on on the footballers, and a part of me was like, I wonder, if like people who watch, these kinds of movies outside of the U.S., if they're ever like, why is this? What is the obsession with football? Like these types of movies, like like it must be so
Yeah.
weird to like watch this in like Europe if they do, and it's like Americans,
Mm-hmm.
there's something wrong with them if they're obsessing this much over football.
Well, I think they do think there's something wrong
Oh,
with
absolutely.
us for many
Yes.
reasons. This is just adding to the list of those. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious, especially with the in the lunch line. Like he has his like, it's almost like in Middle Ages when the like king would have a taster to like make sure their food wasn't poisoned.
Yeah.
The other players are making sure that Jeff doesn't have the like pineapple juice served like in proximity to him at all, which is a hilarious like little bit, and then it ends up becoming incredibly relevant to the plot later in the movie as well.
Yeah, it's such a small thing, but yeah, that's a good point. It just felt like food tasters in a way. But yeah, I think the absurd focus on, or obsession of like the high school football team, and they're just like the cream of the crop, the top dogs of the school, the most popular kids. Even like how they had like Jeff's like the football team table set up. It was kind of like the Last Supper in a way, you know.
Yes, it was. Well, it was framed like
Yes,
that,
it was,
wasn't it?
because everyone was sitting on one side of the table, and he was in the middle of
I
it.
forgot about that joke. That's
It's
so
just like,
funny.
wow, everyone's up there. All 13 of them. That's cool.
Yep.
But I think it's also, I mean, just putting that spotlight on football in this movie, it feels appropriate because yes, high schools do this where they put so much emphasis on football, especially probably where you're from, in Texas. But I think universities, it's kind of a critique of those like collegiate athletics to a certain extent, because I feel like especially with those like D1, D2 schools, the ones that like they make so much money off of their sports teams that it's like they're with those players, it doesn't matter what they're learning or what their GPA is. It's just like they're the best, and that's all that they need to be. Like so many universities do that too, of just saying, yeah, the athletes kind of matter more than the academics in a lot of regards because we make so much money off of them.
Yep. True. Another thing, and I just thought this was interesting, as much as Mr. G's character, Marshawn Lynch, is a comedic role, as is his anti-feminist arc in the second half of the film, I think it actually does a pretty good job of illustrating how some men end up falling down that rabbit hole. Like, he has one bad experience where his trust is abused by a couple women, and he just completely hard pivots from, like, doing his best and trying to be, like, a feminist ally to being full anti-feminist. It does seem like a lot of guys in that space ended up there because they were, from their perspective, wronged by one girl or another, and they just decide at that point, like, all women are bad. Obviously, that's a very dumb perspective, but the red pill anti-feminist, like, ecosystem is not, they're not trying to attract people with the best critical thinking skills. They're like, it's like the like email scams, right? Like the typos are there on purpose to like filter out the people who would be bothered by the typos. Like they're targeting people who are angry and alone and are susceptible to their messaging. But it does, seem like he kind of comes back around at the end, which is good. He doesn't end the movie like hating women. But I did love that after he's pissed them off, he comes into class. It's like, why every president has been a man and why it should stay that way.
Oh, I forgot about that bit. Yeah, he's like so pissed off because he feels so wronged by this club he was sponsoring.
Yeah, well, and he's going through a divorce too, right? So he's going through a divorce, and then he like falls in with this crowd, and he's like, what the fuck? Y'all took advantage of me as an ally so you could get laid. It's fucked up.
And it's like, but come on, man. Look the other way. I don't know. But yeah, I love that bit, and I think, to your point, yeah, it's like there are so many people that kind of fall down that rabbit hole of thinking when, one bad experience with women, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's it. I'm swearing off of them,
Yeah.
or it's just this whole kind of backwards way of thinking about things, and you're not even trying to consider that not everyone's evil, not everyone's
Yeah.
terrible, not everyone's bad.
That's why I think like, and this is just real life advice to other young men. Just make friends with some women. Like, have no agenda, just make friends with them because it completely inoculates you to like all of that manosphere like anti-feminist bullshit. Like, if you are friends with just one female person, everything those guys say about women, you'll be like, "What? What are you talking about?" And you'll be free of this dumb like
This is
grift. Like, that's it. Just do that.
Dylan with the real red pill.
Yeah, well, I mean, about like the Matrix, the red pill is like an objectively like left-wing like trans awakening anti-capitalist story. It's very disappointing that the right has like taken that red pill aesthetic for their own means because it's like not for them, but whatever. That's a tangent. But like, honestly, real advice, just don't be creepy, like be friends with women and you'll be fine. Like, it's not that crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you had some notes about the ending of the movie, the climax, basically. What did you want to talk about with that?
And the more I've thought about it, the more that I've lightened up about it, because I think when I first watched this movie, I liked everything up through that second act and into the third act, and then once we get to the ending, that's like this big clusterfuck on the field of just like violence and ridiculous over the top violence. When I was watching the movie, I was like, okay, I'm starting to check out. This is too much for me. This feels like you're jumping the shark a little bit. But I understand that in this movie, there's like, it's very exaggerated. This is kind of a parody of those other American teenager films, coming of age films in America here, and I think the absurdity and the exaggeration heightens the comedic bits a lot through this. And I feel like maybe I'm in the minority about the ending because initially I feel like it just went a little too off the rails for my liking. But I feel like overall it is an appropriate climax to the movie in many ways, because it gives our protagonists and their fight club the chance to reconcile, team up, and showcase those acquired fighting skills that they just taught themselves. Yes. And so I love that. I love that part a lot. I think just initially it was like, okay, it's these literal teenage girls going out onto a football field with no equipment or anything, and they're fist fighting these football players in pads who have helmets and all this extra gear. And like, I remember watching one point, like this guy, he's like swinging around his helmet and he narrowly misses this girl's head. And in my head, I'm thinking, if he hit her with that helmet, concussion for 100%, like concussion. Like, she's not getting up after that. But and I feel like there was just like some things that kind of came out of nowhere that were, funny. Like that one girl, she just skewers a guy with a sword out of nowhere. It feels like Anchorman in a way.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I loved the ending. I know it's absurd, but at that point I was just on board with the absurdity the movie was serving up, so I was ready for it. And also it's satisfying to see them like kick the shit out of the other football team. And I love that the like villain plot is that they put pineapple juice into the sprinkler and they were going to poison him with the sprinkler system while they played the game. And I love that all of this is happening in front of a stadium full of like faculty and parents, and they're all just like, what?
They're like, oh my god.
As these girls just kill an entire football team.
Literally, yeah. Like, they all, at the end, they're like, oh, you killed that guy? I killed that guy? Like, they're pointing at each other. Yeah. Oh, it's absurd, but
it's awesome.
I feel like, it lives up to the silly aspect of the movie. So, like I said, I feel like I've lightened up on it since the viewing has been over a week. So,
okay.
But yeah, it was so silly that they try to kill him with pineapple juice, but then the whole opposing team dies anyways. So it's like, what was the plan here? Just to kill him? Like,
Yeah, I think it was just to kill him. They'd like to, because if they kill the star quarterback, then they could win the football game.
Oh my god.
They weren't anticipating a trained fighting force of high school girls to kick the shit out of them.
Oh. But yeah, I mean that game
yeah.
had a lot of good comedic bits too, like the old guy in the stands where he's like everyone's like focusing on like the two teenage girls like making out, and then he's like, why are we looking at this? I'm here for the good old fashioned man on man ball slapping action. That sounds so out there, dude. Like, you know what you're going for there with that line.
Yeah. I also loved the movie treats its violence in such an offhand way in every instance, except when Hazel gets the shit kicked out of her by that guy at the pep rally. And then it just lingers on her, like, having to take a realistic amount of time to recover. And she's, like, in bed, and all the other girls are over, like, having a movie night, including the girl who got cheated on when her boyfriend slept with Hazel's mom, who is, like, serving them snacks. But it's just, like, everything else is just treated as no big deal, except for this one instance. And it's kind of, like, upsetting, but in a goofy way too. Also, the Hazel character in general is just really funny. She's just a goofball.
Yeah, she's great. I love her, and just like how serious she takes everything. But yeah, you're totally right. Like, they would get like a broken nose one day, and then the next day they come to class and it's like, oh, I'm totally fine. Like, don't even worry about it. I got no cuts or bruises.
Yeah, and they are all bruised. Like, they're all bruised and cut up and everything. And it is kind of like Fight Club in that moment where they're all like nodding to each other when they're beat up, like in the montage from Fight Club. Although we should say, like, the movie is not similar to Fight Club, if you're, like, under the impression that it is. The characters talk about Fight Club a little bit, but it's like, this is not comparable in any way to that film.
Well, yeah, I think the only way that that it's similar is that, yes, it is a Fight Club, and then they also had those rules at the start where they're like, first rule, you show up on time, no exceptions kind of deal. Like, they're listing all these rules, and then they immediately break them.
Yeah, because the girls that they want there are there late.
Yeah, it's like, all right, no exceptions except for today.
Yep. But any final thoughts on Bottoms?
You know, I think as a whole, it's a great comedy that, everyone can enjoy. I don't think it's just reserved to one audience or another. I feel like people from the LGBTQ community can respect this movie and find a lot of value in it and find it funny too. And then people like you and me who are, not in that community, but, we still found this incredibly funny. And I feel like, people of all ages can find something to relate to in this film too. What about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah. So it's just, I agree. It's just a good comedy, and it's, like this type of film, high school sex comedy, basically, like, traditionally has been targeted squarely at our demographic, and now we are getting this genre for broader demographics, which is great. Like, shouldn't be upset about that. It's a funny fucking movie. And, learn to appreciate humor that's targeted at people other than yourself, and I think you'll have a better time at the movies. But yeah, this is really funny. I would say, like if you don't want to watch a really violent movie, you can skip it. It is pretty violent.
Yeah, it does have some.
But otherwise, it's awesome. It's such a good time.
It's comedic. It's camp. It's silly. It's everything you kind of want in a comedy. Checks all my boxes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can move on to the last segment of our show now, where we talk about other stuff that we've been up to lately, reading, watching, playing, all that good stuff to keep us entertained. Dylan, what have you been up to lately?
So I have been reading Brandon Sanderson's Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. It's very good. It's these two people on different worlds dealing with their own separate problems. One of them lives in a world where, like, these shades kind of come into town, and they are the nightmares, and they kind of haunt people's dreams and feed on them until they become stable, and then they can be really dangerous.
Oh.
And his job is, like, to go find the nightmares and make a painting of something that is in a similar shape to the nightmare, and it will transform them into that thing. And it's like a form of containment. And then Yumi is on her world, and she's like basically a spirit talker who turns spirits into things that people need, and then they sort of get connected into each other, where like they keep getting sent in like shade form to each other's worlds, where like one of them is occupying the body of the other while the host is just kind of like floating next to them, and they're trying to figure out, why is this happening to us? What are we supposed to do? And I really like it a lot. It's another Brandon Sanderson book that I'm really enjoying.
That sounds really cool.
Also,
I like that premise.
It's a cool premise. Yeah. And also continuing to play Baldur's Gate 3. I think I'm pretty close to the end of Act 2 now, which it's I've played it for like 72 hours at this point. It continues to be incredible.
Wow.
It's so well written. All the characters are delightful, and it's just like there are so many like in role-playing games, I tend to play a good character. And most people do, actually. Yeah. They have statistics on that, and most people end up liking to play good people. And there's so many moments in a good playthrough, they're just like, oh my god, that's so heartwarming. Like, we worked really hard, and we saved these people, and now they're, like, thanking us, and we're all celebrating together and moving on to the next adventure, and it feels so good. And there's this one, one of the characters who's a bit of a dick at the start of the game, but, like, they basically... everyone finds out like that this other villain might be coming for them eventually, and just based on the adventures everybody's been on, everybody in the party is like, if they come for our guy, we'll just fucking kill him, right? Like we're gonna protect our friend. And I'm like, oh my god, it's so well written that I just totally buy that all these people who didn't really like each other all that much at the start are like, yeah, we'll kill this guy if he comes for you. We got your back. It was awesome. Yeah. Also, I've been playing Starfield, the new Bethesda game, space adventure game. I like it. It's great in the quests and the writing. If you're looking for a space exploration game, this is not your game. Which is very weird because it was definitely marketed as like being able to explore the stars and stuff like that. And you explore the stars by fast traveling to orbit of a planet, flying around in a little space area, and then fast traveling to the surface of said planet. But other than that, like, if you like Bethesda games, if you like Fallout, if you like Elder Scrolls, you'll probably have a good time with this. Also, the dub of the most recent Attack on Titan episode came out. I usually watch like anime movies subbed, but for shows I've tended to do dubbed. So I finally am caught up on Attack on Titan. I think I'd like to rewatch the whole season leading up to the actual finale, though, because there were definitely some things that I was like, I don't really remember exactly what led up to this, but I really liked it. Attack on Titan's great, And then I also have watched a decent chunk of the live-action Netflix One Piece show, which is an anime adaptation, and I'm liking it a lot. It's really cool.
Right on.
Sort of like a world of pirates. It's kind of goofy, fun cast of characters just sailing around on adventures. I'd recommend it. And
nice.
Also continuing to watch Ahsoka. I don't know if you're caught up on it. We can talk about it a little bit if you are.
I've still got to catch up on that one. For sure.
Yeah. Well, that'll be an episode of ours in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it there. But what about you? What have you been doing?
So I did not watch the most recent episode of Attack on Titan, but in anticipation for the dub being released finally, because I'm on the same page as you with the dub for the show, I basically rewatched all of this fourth season. I got caught up before part one of the final few episodes. So I got all caught up, so I'm a little bit more fresh on what happened and everything. But yeah, I just needed to rewatch it because I needed it in my life again. I think it's just such an excellent anime series, and I'm so excited to see how it ends. But I think I think that season is probably the best one, and I just wanted to just get another run through of it, basically, because I think there are some things that I totally forgot about. There was an episode that I missed entirely, so I was like, okay, gotta watch that one.
That's crazy. How'd
I
that
don't know.
happen?
I must have like skipped it somehow, but it was like I won't go into spoilers for it, but yeah, I just somehow
Mhm.
missed it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the getting caught up to where you are as well.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, we've just been continuing on with Succession season 3. Loving it. It's hilarious. We just watched Kendall's birthday party, which is
Oh God, that episode's brutal.
it is so depressing. Oh my god, it just makes you feel for him, and at the same time you hate him. You hate all of them. Honestly,
Hmm. Yeah,
they're the worst. And then one thing
they
too,
are.
with you and some other friends, we started Dungeons and Dragons campaign the other week,
Hmm.
and this is my first time playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it was a lot of fun getting it kicked off, and I'm excited to keep
Yeah.
it going and flesh out my character or flesh him out a little bit more. You know.
Yep. Me too. This is my first time DMing, so I'm learning a lot as we go as well. I was doing a lot of work on that earlier this afternoon, session prepping and making maps and all that stuff. So it's a good time. I love D&D.
Yeah, it's very fun. I'm enjoying it so far, and yeah, can't wait to see where it goes.
Cool. Yeah, but I think we are a week late this week. But I think maybe we'll try to get back on schedule and maybe do an episode next week, but we will see what that episode will be on. Who knows? We'll figure it out in the meantime. But until then, Niles, where can people find you online?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, where can people follow you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on Instagram at DylanD1026, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, on Twitch at D-Day_movies, and I'll plug the Twitter replacements when Twitter dies. I'm there as well, but I don't really use them.
Yeah.
Sorry for being a little late this week and another shorter episode, but, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. And we love doing this, and we hope you guys are liking it too. And if you enjoy these episodes, we hope you'll share it with a friend or leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice, or just leave us a comment or send us, tweet at us or message us and say, hey, love it, keep it going, because we love those interactions.
We do. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay safe. Bye.
Bye.